Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I'm Cecilia, the Director of the NCBFAA Educational Institute, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's presentation. Before we begin, I would like to remind you that all attendees are in listen-only mode. However, you can type questions into the question box on the webinar toolbar at any time, which we will address as time permits. Additionally, we will be running some poll questions throughout the presentation, including a few before we begin, which we would like you to take a moment to answer. I'm excited to welcome Sandy Cody from A.N. Daringer as our moderator today. Sandy is the NCBFAA's EPA RAC Subcommittee Chair and will be introducing our speakers today. We are thrilled they are able to offer their expertise with us, so without further delay, I will turn it over to Sandy.
Thank you, Cece. Yes, we would really thank EPA for allowing us to get a better understanding of ACE filings for pesticides. Today, we're fortunate to have Roy Chaudet presenting first. Roy is a Senior Program Manager with EPA's Office of Environmental Information, and he is the Technical Lead for ITDS and ACE. He co-leads a cross-agency team of 6 EPA program offices that regulate commodities entering and leaving the United States. The focus is to move from paper-centric to electronic filing where possible and automate and streamline the clearance of legitimate cargo. Next will be Allison Watanabe. She is with Region 9, which is California, Arizona, and Nevada. She is an inspector and the pesticide imports coordinator for Region 9. She inspects pesticide import shipments and reviews pesticide import filings. She conducts inspections of pesticide manufacturing facilities and applications. So without further ado, I think we're going to start the first polling questions and then turn the presentation over to Roy.
Okay, so CC, I see something on my screen that says the organizer must close poll to enable screen sharing.
Oh, I'm sorry. The poll's open right now, so I'm going to make everybody organize. So the poll's open. I'm just going to give everybody a few more seconds, and then we will launch the results.
Okay. Will I be?
And then let me share the results.
I see.
Where are you able to see the poll results?
No. Do I need to click on something here? Maybe because I'm got my slides up.
Okay, well, it looks like it's 83% customs brokers, 2% freight forwarders, 11% importers, 1% software, and other 3%.
Great.
Okay, so the next.
Oh, I see.
So we just launched the second poll. What is your experience importing pesticides? If you could just take a few minutes to answer, we'll keep it open for about 30 seconds.
I can see the polls now, poll results.
Okay. And we're going to share.
Wow, so we have almost 40% that are new to this. Great. Well, this is really pretty helpful, seeing that we've got mainly brokers, some importers, and others, and that we have about 39% that are completely new to this, 14% that sort of regularly do this, and 29% are occasionally, and 18% that are used to filing the paper NOAAs but haven't used ACE. So I think this will be a good a good reminder for the 14% that do file regularly, but I think for everyone else, this will be a good overview of sort of the, I'm going to touch on mainly the mechanics of filing pesticide NOAAs and ACE and go over a tip sheet. And then Allison is actually going to get into the details of what she does and, what is a pesticide and sort of what she does and her reviews and working with you guys. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So let me move on to our first slide. What I first want to do is just talk about what the effective dates are for filing an ACE and a few things for you to keep in mind. Also remind everybody that that there are three parties that play a vital role here for successful filings, and then get into just a few things to think about for getting ready for filing and what messages you'll get back from ACE. And then there's a filing tip sheet that we're going to make that's available on the Customs website, but we provide regular updates too. And so I want to go through that as well. And of course, if you need to contact me, I'll give you my information. So the pesticide notice of arrival filing, the CBP rule for that was effective September 30th, 2016. And we waited until May 22nd to actually set the tariff code flags in ACE. And they're all flagged as may be required. So they're not set as that. We have EPA on all of our commodities have no required flags, and that allows you to disclaim if you need to, if the goods don't really if you don't need to file for the goods. And we'll get into that in a little bit here. But the important thing to note here, and it's the second box here, the importer is really responsible for knowing what's required to be filed, whether a NOAA needs to be filed or not. And that's whether or not a tariff code has been flagged or not. And I think, for example, when we reviewed the 99 chapters of the tariff codes, I think we flagged for all of our commodities on the order of maybe 800 or 900. We could have potentially flagged as many as 3,000 or 4,000. So the potential for other commodities that could be flagged exists. And in fact, we get brokers and filers and importers who email me all the time and say, hey, this isn't flagged, but this is a pesticide that I'm importing. And then what we do is we update our flags once a year with Customs. So it's an evolving process, and that's why we can never really be 100% on our flagging, and that's why the importer really needs to know what it is they need to file or not. And when I go over the tip sheet, they can contact I have contacts for the EPA regions where they can ask them if they need to file or not for the commodity that they're trying to import. The other thing, too, that we see commonly as of September 30th, 2016, or 17, hold on here. I'm trying to, let me get this box out. 16, yeah. Negative TSCA certifications are no longer required when you file a NOAA. And so we do see people still filing that because that's what they did in the past, and they don't really need to as of that September 30th, 2016 date. So that's basically sort of the setting the stage for the pesticide NOAA filings. What's really important is that the importer and in your case, you're not dealing with exporters because we only regulate imports, but the importer and the broker filer really work hand in hand along with the software provider. And so, the importer really needs to make sure they get the appropriate information for the notice of arrival and a legible, accurate, complete label that also gets provided as well to the broker for filing. And the broker needs to know how to file and use the software that the software provider has provided. So I think it's really important that all three just have a key role here. And in fact, there are times where I'm asked questions about, well, how do I do this on my screens? Well, that's really a question that a broker filer needs to ask their software provider. They shouldn't be asking EPA because we can't see those screens. We don't know what those screens look like. And sometimes I'll make a guess, and sometimes I'll get it right. But it's really, if you can, you should reach back to your software provider. So what do you do to get ready to file? There's really three ways to file. One is to provide an image of your on-product label into the document image system, along with the notice of arrival data in the PGA message set, or will you type it into your screens? And so that really is the preferred way, and you'll see on the next page why. Because if you do everything right, you can potentially get an automatic may proceed. And with the regions, we'll check the labels, and if it turns out your label's good, that automatic may proceed holds. So that really is the preferred, fastest way to go about doing this. The other two ways can be done if you're not familiar with how to type the data into your screens or upload the image to DIS. And we only really recommend using these if you just can't do the first method. And that's where you do provide an image of an EPA signed notice of arrival. And when you do that, and we've seen it where people will get a notice of arrival that's been signed by the importer, but EPA hasn't signed it. And what the importer should have done, or sometimes a broker on their behalf, is they should have mailed the notice of arrival signed by the importer to the region. The region reviews it, and if it's okay, along with a label, and then if the region reviews it and it's okay, they sign it and they send it back to the importer, who then gives it to the broker. So then you would upload that image and then do a disclaim code C as in Charlie. And what that C does, that C is called file by other means. And that lets ACE know that you're not filing a message set. You're filing by other means, which is an upload to DIS. And so when you do that, you need to enter into your screens, meaning the message set, the agency, which would be EPA, whatever program it is, and PS1 or 2 is either a registered pesticide or device. So, and then disclaim code C, to indicate that it's filed by other means. There's also the rule allows for paper filing, and you would do the same thing, but with a disclaim code D as in David. So I think that's the main message I want to provide on this slide. There are details in the CATER, and there's a link here for that, and I think these slides will be made available. And as we'll go through, there are things to check for first. And if you want, you can work with your software provider to actually test first if you've never done any filings. And we urge you to do that so there's no surprises. So what happens when you file? If you file that first method with a full message set, there's an automatic electronic review. So instead of the EPA regions reviewing a piece of paper, there's a review of what you filed, and things like registration numbers are checked against a list that we give customs every night. And the producer establishment number are checked against a list that we give customs every night. And if they match, then they're going to pass the automatic check. And if they don't, then I'll go through the messages here of what happens. So what happens when you file, if you don't provide all the information you need to for a filing, you'll get a reject. And it's not just a reject of the NOAA, but it's a reject of your customs entry filing as well. So it's everything. So your CVP client rep can actually see why it's being rejected. We cannot. EPA cannot see why it's rejected, and they can tell you what you didn't provide in order to have the message accepted. So when you provide enough information so that it can be processed, you'll first get an accept message, and then it runs through all these automatic checks. And if things don't match up, let's say if that registration number that you provided doesn't match up with one that we sent over that night, you'll get a hold intact message. And that hold intact message means that the data is invalid, or in some cases you didn't provide all the contact information, like all the broker information, and a few other things as well. In some cases, there will be an under review message, and that's because somebody's picked something wrong completely, like ozone depleting substances. So I left that there, but really for pesticides, the only message where it doesn't successfully process really is a hold intact. But the happy path, the one that we like to see, is that you file, you get an accept, and you get an automatic may proceed. And that's really what we'd like to see. But here's the key point. The key point is you really need to look at filing as early as possible. Because in general right now we're seeing about 80 to 90% of all the pesticide NOAA filings are getting this automatic may proceed. So people are doing it right. But for the it's really anywhere from 17 to lower percentages on any given period aren't getting it right. And we urge you to file early as you possibly can, like when the goods are loaded onto the conveyance kind of early, or even earlier if you can, so that if you have to, you can correct it and get a may proceed from the region by the time it arrives at the port of entry. And so just so you know what happens when that hold intact fires and you get that hold intact message, the region gets a message as well. And so they basically need time to go in and look at what you filed and get back to you and allow time for you to make corrections. And we really would like to see all that happen before the goods arrive at a port of entry. So I think with that,
Roy,
I'm going to ask.
Sandy,
go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah. Hey, Cindy.
Real
Go ahead.
quick. Just so you're aware, the hold intact does not prevent the CBP release from processing. It's a separate path, so you have to be very aware because you could get a customs release, but you have a hold intact on the EPA side, similar to an FDA.
Exactly. So you would see a CBP release, but a hold intact, which means the goods cannot enter commerce, just like FDA or similar to FDA. So I think with that, with the theme of filing early, I'm going to ask CC to kick off the next poll. We got 2 more questions, and so CC, if you could do that, that'd be great, and see what kind of thoughts people have about filing early. So CC, did you start off with the second question, not the first one?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I did. But
yeah, you did.
I can wait to share those. I can launch the other question now.
Yeah, why don't you launch the other one first? And then I want to talk about this one before you share the other one.
Did you want to close that poll and share these results now?
Yeah, folks are done. Okay, so in working with customs, this question was sort of in the world of full possibility, how early for an ocean shipment could someone file? And really the answer is 60 days prior to arrival, and if a vessel isn't that far out, literally when the vessel is loaded. But a lot of you at 63% recognize that customs only clears it 5 days out from the port prior to arrival. And so my main message here is you can file 60 days prior to arrival or when the vessel is loaded, even before the 5-day clearance by customs, so that it gives time for the regions to either look at what you've done, or if you've got a may proceed, you're in good shape if you don't hear anything back on the label. So that's the main point I wanted to make right there. Okay, go ahead, Cece, on the other one. And why don't you let them continue voting on this one? Or can you? Or is it closed?
Yeah, it's closed. They can't vote anymore.
Okay. All right. So I think everybody got this. That basically the benefits are to minimize delays at the port of arrival and to meet the reporting requirements for legitimate entry and allow time for corrections. Those clearly all are the benefits of filing. But that auto docs required, which I'm going to get into in just a moment, is what happens when you file a paper NOAA or an image of a NOAA, and that really is not a benefit of filing early. So good, most of you guys got that one. All right, so I think that's all I wanted to cover on the two questions. So let me kind of just touch on that. So if you're uploading a label, you want to tag it so EPA and CBP can see it, because if you don't tag it with an EPA 04 for the label or an 03 for the pesticide notice of arrival, EPA can't see it at all. And at the same time, you're also, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to need to type into your screens, the agency is EPA, the program, and the disclaim code C. And then just so you know, this is really, really important. If you file a disclaim code C for an image in DIS or a D for a piece of paper, the entry will automatically go to documents required and the shipment will be held. And that's so that the customs port officers can look in DIS and make sure that you've provided an EPA signed notice of arrival. If it's your shopping list or it's something other than a notice of arrival, that doc's required and the hold will stay on the shipment until you've provided an EPA signed notice of arrival. And at that point, the port officers will then cancel the docs required once they've verified that. So we have people contact us all the time saying, hey, I've got a docs required. Can you please review this and release it? And the answer is really customs can do that, but we can't. What customs may do is reach back to our regional offices, but we can't actually cancel a docs required. And I think with that, I'm going to switch to my the filing tip sheet. And Cece, I need your help here for a minute. I want to bring up do I hit escape to get out of this and then pull up my other Word document?
Yeah, so you can just click pause your screen and then just click escape and then open up your document.
Oh, well, wait a minute. Let me show. Here's my information if you need to contact me. And I'm pretty responsive. You folks on the West Coast, I do work with you sometimes after hours here on the East Coast. Okay. So, all right, let me minimize this. And here is the tip sheet. And I would just urge you guys to look at this. We're making it available. I'm just going to blow through this so that you get a sense of what's on here. So the first topic, determining filing requirements. This is a link to all the regional contacts so that your importer and you, if you want to, can contact the region and find out, do I need to file a no or not for this commodity? And then again, when you file your notice of arrival, it needs to be filed with the entry or the entry summary certified for cargo release, or as some folks call it, certified from summary. If you file with the entry summary, sometimes we can't see the data and we cannot take action on it to give it a may proceed. So never file the summary, the NOAA with the summary. Here's a quick overview of the three options I mentioned in the slide presentation. I'm not going to go through it again, but the good news is the first option involves no mailing. You can get an automatic may proceed. The other two options involve mailing to the region in that time frame, and then your goods will be getting a docs required till customs can look at it and verify that it's signed by EPA. On product labels, this comes up quite a bit. Labels are as important as the information that you file in the message set, and we've gotten labels that are just a barcode, and that doesn't really quite cut it. So this document actually tells you what all really needs to be on that label in general. So you can go to this link and click it. Disclaim codes. There's only 3 disclaim codes that can be used, and Allison's going to go over these in detail as well. But A is if they're not required per agency regulation. I will warn you that our regions go in and check that disclaim code A, and if the commercial description and other parts of the filing looks like it could be a pesticide, you're going to be contacted. So just be aware. And we have people that make mistakes and choose A by mistake. We also have people that choose A when they meant to choose C. And so that is a problem as well. And then we have the reverse, that's the case as well. They choose C when they meant to choose A, and they get a docs required on their shipment. So that's it on the disclaim codes. These are all details on things you need to think about when you file. And I'm just going to blow through this pretty quickly. The PS1 is a registered pesticide. PS2 is a device, so like a bug zapper. And PS3 are other pesticides that may be unregistered or an R&D product or something along those lines. The 2 tags that you use, this will be something I'm reinforcing, is the EPA 03 for the NOAA and the 04 for the label. When you upload that image in the PG01 record or in the screens, there is a checkbox to indicate that you've uploaded an image in the PGA message set. If you don't click that, you will get a warning in your software, and that much I do know. Because the timing issues, if you don't have to file with FDA filings, that's preferred because they have some restrictions in terms of not being able to make corrections less than 5 days prior to arrival. Allison's going to go over the registration and producer establishment format numbers, but the bottom line is that the registration, you want to double check that, and it's really as it's provided with the dashes left in. The producer establishment number is 6 numbers, 3 letters, 3 numbers. If it's a domestic one, it'll only have 2 letters instead of 3. Don't try and mess with the format. Just file it. You'll get a hold intact, but the regions need to look at that anyway. To always check your country of origin, because those 3 letters in that producer establishment number are country of origins that we check against the customs country of origin. Many times they line up and sometimes they don't. So it's really important that you check that. The other thing too is when you file, these parties all need to be included. The first one is if someone's saying I need to be notified because I'm saying this is confidential business information. But the rest, the certifying individual, the importer, the carrier, the shipper, of course the EPA producer establishment number, all need to be provided. The location of goods is the location that you're providing in the form, and it's the information you provide with these codes of where the goods are going to be located if they get moved out of a port when they're held intact. And that's so if the region needs to come inspect, they know where the goods are to inspect the goods. And then, of course, you guys, many of you as customs brokers. The other thing just to look at here in general is the packaging. It all has to kind of add up to the total net weight. So you have a lower level packaging, and then you have a second largest level of packaging with a unit measure and quantity. And they all have to sort of multiply up to come to something similar to what you expect in the total net weight. A lot of stuff is laid out in the CATER. It is laid out primarily for software providers, but if you want to dig into it, you can. We did put this in here for the case of returned goods. Some of you deal with returned goods. And when you do, it provides, again, a domestic producer establishment number where that's 2 letters instead of 3. And you will get a hold intact, but the region will look at that then and see if it's good. And if it's good, they'll give you a may proceed. So that's kind of a whirlwind tour of this. This is available. I urge you to keep it handy it distills down the common problems that we deal with every day that some of you have contacted us on to work on the pesticide filings. And I think with that, I have taken up more than enough of my time. So, CC, you can hand it over to Allison now.
I think there's some questions, Roy, that
Oh,
came
okay.
across.
That's right. That's right. Let's go over some questions.
Let me just answer the where this is located. This document under cbp.gov. This your tips, which are updated regularly, right? So, or
Yes.
they are updated.
Yep.
So it's under cbp.gov under ACE, under trade, ACE, and automated systems, and then there's a link that's called ACE features. And within the ACE features, there's a bunch of little tabs, and one of them is TGA integration, and there you will find EPA's handy tips, TGA filing support for pesticide, TSCA, and vehicles and engines. Thank you, Roy, for putting those together for us.
Sure. And they're living documents. So every time you guys have questions, we listen. And we try to figure out how do we figure it out along with you to get it down in those tip sheets. So it's a living document. All right. Any other questions? I just see the one from Omar.
There's quite a few. You got to scroll up, Roy.
Okay. And here we go. There we go. There are quite a few. All right, let me just go through these real quick. And can we go over in time a little bit, CC? Because I'm eating up a bunch of time here.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. All right. All right. Starting at the top. All right. It looks like there's questions of the slides. You can get those. There's a TSCA question, so there is a TSCA tip sheet. I'll go ahead and point you there, because this talk is mainly about pesticides. And your software provider, if a HTS code is not flagged as may be required for pesticides, your software provider needs to allow you to make that filing anyway. And in fact, if you have a software provider that won't let you do that, please let me know. Let's see. Yeah, there's a question about positive or negative TSCA certs. It's just the negative that's no longer needed with pesticides. Okay, there's a question about DIS email versus EDI. I think that's a question for customs. And on the disclaim of TSCA for pesticides, you wouldn't use a B unless it's a special one, but what I would urge you to do is you can Google the words TSCA hotline, and they can tell you a little bit about how to do that. But typically the disclaim would be an A, code A, meaning not required.
When you claim the pesticide, when you file the
when you file a pesticide and it's flagged for TSCA as well, you would file a disclaim code A for the TSCA. Okay, is the filing required for pesticide going to? I'm going to skip that one. There's a question of if there is a hold intact, where can the goods be moved? And I'm going to leave that one for Allison. But in general, the general statement is the goods cannot enter commerce. And it's usually moved to a location where if the region needs to inspect it, they can. And let's see. And again, there are websites about what is a pesticide, and Allison's going to get into that. And also you can contact the regions. Let's see. Yeah. So EPA and ACE went into effect September 30th, 2016 at all ports nationwide. So it's been in effect for a while. And yes, you can file it for every single port. Okay, there's some good questions here. And what we'll do is we'll get back to you if I don't speak to these directly on the call here. And you can file the notice of arrival electronically nationwide. So these are national, and it standardizes a lot of what happens with all the regions. And someone indicated here that New York requires paper to be submitted. I think they do that if they don't have confidence that the filer can file accurately in ACE, and so that is something that we've done. So I think that's about it for the questions. Hopefully that gets most of them, and we'll get back to you on the rest. And I think with that, we will turn it back over to
So Alice and I made you the presenter. We just need you to share your screen so we can see your presentation.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Watanabe, and I'm the Pesticide Imports Coordinator with US EPA's Region 9 office. And so the Region 9 office has responsibility for overseeing environmental programs in the Pacific Southwest, and that does include California, Nevada, Arizona, and Hawaii in the Pacific Islands. And as mentioned earlier, I'm one of the people that reviews pesticide import filings, so a lot of this presentation will be from the point of view of someone who is seeing these filings all the time. And I'm going to be focusing on presenting information that will help ensure that your filings are correct and hopefully successful. Okay, so, just a little bit of background to start off with. When we're talking about pesticide filings, we're talking about importing products that are subject to this act, to the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act. And this is the federal statute that governs pesticides. And, this act, it recognizes the usefulness of pesticides. It is useful to have products available that can do things like kill fungus, kill bacteria, repel insects, kill weeds, things like that. Pesticides and devices that have these capabilities are useful while also trying to ensure protection of public health and the environment from unreasonable adverse effects of these pesticides. So again, the Act recognizes that pesticides are very useful while also ensuring that public health and the environment is protected. So to that end, the agency in general registers pesticides, so product registration is a foundation for this program. And we also regulate the production, the distribution and sale, distribution including importation, and also the use of pesticides. And states are granted primary enforcement responsibility for pesticide use violations. Just a brief overview of the FIFRA regulated universe. I think the main things that I wanted to point out here are, once again, I mentioned that product registration is really the basis for this program. You can see that there are 63,236 registered products. I also wanted to point out the registered pesticide producer establishments. These are the locations, the facilities where the pesticides and devices will be produced. And for those of you that are familiar with this program, you'll remember that we ask you to enter into ACE or into the NOA, the product registration number. So again, one of the numbers for the 63,236 products. And we also ask that you enter in the establishment number. And so you can see, how these sort of link up to the general FIFRA regulated universe. Okay, so what do we do in the imports program? So again, in Region 9, we specifically have jurisdiction over the ports in the states that I mentioned earlier. So that would be California, Nevada, Hawaii, and Arizona. If you're dealing with ports in other states, there would be my coworkers in other regions dealing with you for those. In this program, in general, we conduct compliance monitoring and enforcement of imported pesticides, and this includes review and approval of notices of arrival and the PGA data. We conduct inspections at the sites that are listed in general, and usually the regions will conduct most of these inspections. The EPA regional offices will conduct most of these inspections, but sometimes we do ask states to assist us. We also conduct education and outreach, such as I'm doing right now, and of course, we also do enforcement. So there was someone that was asking, well, what are we talking about when we're talking about pesticides? So of course, one of the number one ways that you can make sure that you have a successful pesticide filing is to be able to recognize when something is in fact a pesticide. So here is the definition of a pesticide. It's any substance or mixture of substances intended for preventing, destroying, repelling, or mitigating any pest or a plant growth regulator. So what does that all mean? How do we recognize when something is a pesticide? So one of the ways that we recognize that something is a pesticide is through what we call claims. So for example, on the label or in advertisements, are there claims being made that this product prevents, destroys, repels, mitigates pests? So we're looking for those claims. That's part of what we're looking for when we're asking you to upload the label. Another way to tell that something is a pesticide is through composition. So what is it made of? Does the product contain an active ingredient which has no significant common value other than for use as a pesticide? And then the third way that we can tell that something is a pesticide is through knowledge. So sometimes we'll ask this question, what is this product going to be used for? Is it going to be used, to prevent, destroy, repel, mitigate pests? Okay, and so some of these are just some pesticide product examples. Here's a weed killer, and here's a fungicide. Just some pesticide product examples. Something that I think often surprises brokers, surprises filers, is when we say that these products are pesticides as well. So here are some examples of antimicrobial products, and what you can see here is that they're making pesticidal claims. So notice how they're claiming to kill viruses and bacteria, disinfect or kill germs. And I know many of you are thinking, oh, aren't these just normal cleaning products? But again, remember that one of the ways that we talked about that we can recognize that these are pesticides is through claims, what the product is claiming to do. And I have a website up here, and I believe this presentation will be distributed, but this website is useful, and again, it talks about the difference between, something that is, just a cleaning product and something that is more in the pesticide realm. And here are just some other pesticide product examples, mosquito repellents, flea and tick products. And I just wanted to just throw up a couple of illegal pesticide products that were distributed illegally here in the U.S. One of the products, on the left is the cat be unemployed, and as it suggests, this is a rodenticide. It was not registered in the U.S., and it's highly lethal to children and pets, and it's not legal to be distributed here. And the other product is, you can see that it's making some antibacterial claims, and I think this might fall into that area where we're trying to decide, is this a cleaning product? Is this a pesticide? This is a product that is a pesticide and is not legal to be distributed here. I think this particular product, there are some versions that are legal to be distributed here, but not this one that we found, this one in particular that we found. Okay, so now I'm going to move into talking about, tips for filing an ACE, again, from the perspective of someone that is, in ACE and looking at your filings. And, we noticed through your poll question that many of you are new, so I think it's great that you're participating in this webinar, and I hope that, this is really helpful for you. So I'm just going to emphasize some things to keep in mind. Again, the first thing is that I am the import coordinator for ports in California, Nevada, Hawaii, and Arizona, and I have counterparts in all of the rest of the EPA regions. And so one thing that it's important to do is to reach out and contact those people, and you can find their contact information at this link that I've provided in this slide. Okay, and I know Roy already went through this, but I'm going to say it again just to emphasize this. You have three options for basically filing the Notice of Arrival information. You can file the NOA and ACE through the PGA message set. You can file an EPA-signed NOA and upload it into ACE GIS, and in that case, you would be choosing disclaim code C. Again, I want to emphasize that when you are uploading an NOA into the system, and this is the way that you are going to file, please make sure that it has already been signed by EPA. So, that means that you've already sent this NOA form to an EPA office. It has already been signed by someone at EPA. They have sent it back to you, and now you are uploading that completed signed document into DIS. If it's not signed by someone at EPA, it does not count. Okay, so I want to emphasize that. And then the third option is to file the signed EPA NOA on paper, and this is where you would use disclaim code D. But again, if you are uploading into DIS, you should use disclaim code C. Okay, so I'm going to go through some tips, again, from the point of view of someone who is reviewing your shipments. So this is not meant to be exhaustive, but rather these are common mistakes and things that I see that hold up shipments. So the first thing is to go through, what do you do with a registered pesticide, right? This should be Government Agency Program Code PS1. So these should be filed as PS1. Please remember to always submit a copy of the label that is on the product. Please make sure that these labels are actually legible. If we can't read these documents, it doesn't count. Please remember to submit the whole label, not just part of it. And again, the more you submit up front, the less back and forth we have to have. Making sure that things are legible up front means, you don't have to wait for us to contact you, and then we have to wait for you to contact us back, and we don't have to go back and forth. So it should make things quicker and smoother. The other thing is, I just want to emphasize again the registration number format. The registration number will be on your pesticide label. Please enter the registration number as provided. Please leave in the dashes, leave in those hyphens. Don't take them out. Okay, Continuing on with the registered pesticides with the PS1 government agency program code, I just wanted to talk very quickly about the establishment number format. So I know that on your pesticide labels, you're going to see that it has those dashes in it. You're going to see those hyphens. However, ACE doesn't like to accept the information in that format. So please remember that for ACE, it is a 6-number, 3-letter, 3-number format that ACE wants to accept. So if your establishment number, for example, has fewer than 6 numbers in it, so let's say the establishment number starts with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you will actually need to add leading zeros to that part. So you have to add a 0 in front, and you would make, for example, the number into 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Same for the 3 numbers at the end. You know, you might see on your label that there's only 1 number. It might say just 1 at the end. In that case, you would have to add 2 leading zeros to the front. So you'd have to make that number into 0, 0, 1. Okay? I do want to emphasize that you do not have to do anything to the letters. You know, we understand that sometimes, you know, the 3-letter format is for foreign countries and the 2-letter format is for states. You do not have to change that. That will be caught up in a review possibly, but, you know, all of that is understandable. So just please be aware of the fact that you need to have no dashes in this format, and that in general it needs to follow, you know, the 6-number, 3-letter, 3-number rule. Just a quick note on country of origin. You know, this is something that, as Roy mentioned, you know, we often get caught up in this. You know, just have an explanation for why the country of origin might be different between the country of origin and where the establishment is located. And then finally, the packaging information. Please remember that there need to be at least 2 levels of packing groups, and that you do have to have a total net content information. So sometimes that information is missing, or that information doesn't make sense somehow. And if you do all of these things right, you know, you should be receiving an automatic may proceed, and everything should move very smoothly. Okay. So the next one is, you know, we already talked about what a pesticide is, but some of you are importing devices. And so what is the number one way to have a successful device filing? Well, we need to recognize when something is a device. So a device is an instrument or contrivance other than a firearm and not having a chemical substance that is used to destroy, repel, trap, mitigate pests. Pests such as insects, fleas, rodents, animals, fish, birds, mold, mildew, you know, all of these things. So a device, the difference between a device and a pesticide is that a device works by physical means. It works by electricity or light or mechanics. And, you know, when we're looking at devices, one of the ways we tell the difference between a device and a pesticide is, you know, it can't be sold with some sort of substance or mixture of substances that is supposed to perform that pesticidal purpose, that it's supposed to be performing the destroying or the repelling part. Devices do not require registration. You know, pesticides require registration. Devices do not require registration, so they should not have a registration number. However, they are still regulated by EPA, and they are subject to regulatory requirements. So, for example, a device must still be produced in an EPA establishment, and the label must still have that particular establishment number. A device can also not have false or misleading claims. So if a company is making claims about what an amazing thing a device can do, and, you know, the things that it can kill or trap or whatever, you know, they have to have data to back up those claims. And if you have any questions about devices, we actually have a device work group, and device questions can be submitted to our OPP Device Determinations group at oppdevicedeterminations@epa.gov, and I will provide this to the webinar organizers later so that you can have access to that. Okay, and here are just some pictures of devices, just some device examples. Sonic mole repellers, ozone generators, bug zappers. These are all common devices. And here is a website that is hopefully helpful to you to learn more about devices and help you identify devices. Okay, so moving on to filing for devices. Again, here are just some helpful tips to file correctly. Again, this is not meant to be exhaustive. These are just some things that we see. Devices will be filed as PS2. Again, the product label is required for devices. Again, please make sure that the product label is legible. And usually when we're talking about device labels, they usually come in some sort of boxes. So usually we're asking for all 6 sides of the box. Again, just as with pesticides, you have to be aware that there should be an establishment number on that label. When you enter that establishment number into ACE, it should not have any dashes into it. You have to make sure that it does follow that same number format. So it should be 6 numbers, 3 letters, and then 3 numbers. And you will have to add leading zeros if it does not follow this general rule. Okay, and then hopefully if all of that is done correctly, then you will get an automatic may proceed. Okay, so there is a third government agency program code, PS3, and this is sort of for everything else. And my number one suggestion for these is to file early and be prepared to answer questions and submit additional documentation. Work closely with your regional office on these filings. And the reason is because they are all, very specific, and the situations are very different. And here is a list of things that we commonly see in terms of PS3 filings. A lot of these are unregistered pesticides. Unregistered pesticides can be imported under very limited circumstances. And so that's part of what we're doing in our review. We're trying to see, can these actually fit the very limited circumstances under which you can import unregistered pesticides. So an example of some of these unregistered pesticides might be R&D products, research and development products, substances that we would be considering pesticides, and you're testing them, and they're very limited amounts that can be brought in. Another example that we see is pesticides that are being imported. They're going to be formulated here in the U.S., and then they'll be exported in their new form. And we actually have some more information. You can look at this website about how to make that kind of import. And then, through the contract manufacturing process, unregistered pesticides might be able to be imported in a certain form before they are fully the registered form that's going to be sold in the U.S. And so again, I want to emphasize that these are limited circumstances, and so we are reviewing to see if these kinds of pesticides can meet those limited circumstances. And that's why for PS3, these are going to be flagged, and we will ask questions, and we will ask for additional documentation. Okay. I wanted to just spend one moment to talk about minimum risk pesticides, because I get a lot of questions about things like citronella candles and lemongrass products. And the bottom line is that if this kind of product can meet certain conditions, and there are 6 conditions, then the product can be exempt from regulation under FIFRA. And I've provided a link that describes all of these conditions. Now, if it can meet all of these conditions and it can be exempt from regulation under FIFRA, then these can be filed using disclaim code A. And disclaim A means that it's not subject to FIFRA. But, the thing that I want to warn you about is that it has to meet all of the conditions. And these are very specific conditions. So I recommend that you look at this website. It's very good, and it will explain those conditions. Okay. And then finally, just a note about enforcement, because it is something that we do. In most of the cases, when we find a product cannot be let into the country because there's some sort of problem with it, there's some sort of possible violation, we will, deny entry or refuse delivery of this product. And in terms of how customs reacts to that, that means re-exportation or destruction. That's what that generally means. And I want to say that this happens in almost all of the cases that we deal with that end up being enforcement cases. And while there are maybe some limited cases that we can work through other enforcement means, I want to just emphasize again that the default, the usual mode that we work through with customs, when we deny these products, it's going to end up in re-exportation or destruction. Okay, and I'm just providing my contact information here. I want to say again that if you are importing into other ports, into ports that are not in California, Nevada, Hawaii, or Arizona, then if you start asking me questions, I'm going to refer you to my regional counterparts in those other regions, okay? So I just want to say that first. And so we're a little bit over time, but Cece, do we have time to possibly?
Yeah, I think if you want to maybe take questions for another 5 minutes, but then I think after that, any other questions should be answered offline.
Okay, all right. Let me see, where we ended up with Roy.
At 148.
Let's see.
If you undock your questions, that little box with the arrow. And then under received 148 is your first one from Michelle.
Okay, so someone was asking about the antibacterial claims and whether that automatically makes the product a pesticide. It also depends. There are products that might make antibacterial claims, but they actually fall more under FDA's purview. Things like hand sanitizers, for example, would fall more under FDA's purview. So there are sort of caveats to this. So I want to make you aware of that. So I would say that, when you see those claims, start thinking about it and work with your contacts in your region where you're going to be doing the importation to describe the situation in full.
And Allison, I might help you with this next one if you want.
I think that would be a good idea.
Okay. So the question was, if we transmit the PGA data elements, why do we need to submit screenshots to to the EPA PGA information through DAS. We're not asking for screenshots. In fact, we don't want screenshots. When you type data in, that data is created in a file that's sent to customs. What we're asking you to upload to DIS is an image of that label, not the form, not the data in that used to be that paper form, the 3540-1 notice of arrival. We're asking you to type all that information in so that the ACE can automatically check it with the computer. What we're asking you to do is, in addition to that, upload an image of the on-product label. So hopefully that answers your question. And then the next one asks about if it's not subject, if the tariff code is not flagged for pesticide, but prompts that a pesticide may be required, what is the proper disclaim code? And it is disclaim code A, not regulated by the agency.
And Roy, do you want to?
Yeah, and actually Sandy's going to make the tips available with a screenshot of the customs site here in just a little bit. And then I think
we'll send the link and then how to navigate to the tips when we send out the presentation.
Okay. And Allison, I think the next one is yours.
This question is asking about submitting NOAs to cover a blanket period of imports. I want to emphasize that you need to have an NOA for each of the import entry shipments. So I hope that answers the question.
There are no blankets.
So in other words, you can't just have an open NOA if that's what this person is suggesting. You need to have an NOA for each of the entry shipments. Someone is asking a question about sample materials. I'm not exactly sure what is meant by sample materials. But if this person is asking about research and development products, yes, that needs an NOA or it needs to be filed in ACE.
And I'll answer the next one. Someone asked if there'll be a webinar on vehicles and engines, and we've actually talked to our vehicles and engines lead. And if NCBFAA is so gracious, we would like to do another webinar just on vehicles and engines. So,
yeah, I'll work with you on that, Roy.
That'd be great, Sandy and CC, if you guys are up for it.
So maybe at this point, I don't know, CC, do we want to just respond to the questions in writing that we can answer?
Yeah, I think so, because I think there are just so many, and we don't want to take up too much more time since we're already over by over 10 minutes. So I want to take this time to thank everybody for joining, and thank you, Roy, Allison, and Sandy so much for putting together today's webinar. I will also be sending out PDF copies of the presentations and the tip sheet to everybody that attended. I will get that out hopefully later today, if not, definitely tomorrow. And as everybody mentioned, any questions that weren't answered, we will definitely get to those offline. So thank you everyone for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.